What up? This is Yinka Diz.
Peace, this is Outlaw.
And you're listening to the 80s Babies Podcast.
And on today's episode, we have a Put You Up for Planet Asia's The Medicine. And I don't know what number this is in his catalog because I feel like he's got quite a few EPs and mixtapes and albums that came out before this. And I don't know which number this is.
Correct. He's kind of a mixtape artist, right?
Okay.
So this is the third installment in his Medi-Cali series, which we'll talk about a little bit more.
Okay. And to join us to help us discuss this album and celebrate this artist is a friend of Yinka's, DL Wise.
Yeah, Wise Mouth Allah or DL Chandler, either one. I'm a writer, journalist, and a big fan of Planet Asia.
Hey,
Cool.
Big fan of Planet Asia. And, you know, I'm a big fan of DL. So, you know what I'm saying? He'll play himself down. But, you know, I think we as folks that are kind of tampering in this journalism space, you know, as podcasters, you know, we're kind of tipping off the iceberg. But this hip hop thing is interesting, right? Like, I listen to a few podcasts. I listen to Drink Champs sometimes. I listen to Questlove's podcast. I listen to Joe Budden's podcast. The reason I listen to those people is because they're individuals that can interact with the culture, but they've been a part of the culture, right?
Yeah, true.
And so in the same way, when we watch Shaq and we watch Chuck, you know, talk about basketball, we listen to them a little bit more intently because they've been there. Like, I read DL because he's somebody who's interacted with the culture as an artist. He's been around at you know, in more than just the capacity of being a writer. So I don't know if you want to tell us a little bit more about you know, Dumb High and some
I'll
of the
do
things
it,
that you've
man.
done, brother.
I never like to talk about it, but that's it's fine. I will speak on it for the sake of it. And also, too, you know, I was told recently that I need to start accepting these flowers because they're so rare. You know, so I'll accept it. Thank you, brother. But so a bit of my history, you know, so prior to becoming a journalist, I toyed a lot with rhyming. I was back in the late 80s, my little brother and I, Jay Preem, we would do pause tapes in my mom's basement. So we would take old soul records and old funk records and like literally pause tape sample, you know, our beats or whatever, you know what I mean? Pretty much like every other producer in hip hop ever done, right? So that's really my first foray into hip hop. You know, I started loving this music in the 80s, Run DMC, LL, you know, Ultra Mag, all that kind of stuff, you know, Big Daddy Kane, Coochie Rap, the whole Juice Crew, you know. And then from there, I wanted to try my hand at it. So in around the early 90s, I was around a lot of young, hungry spitters, and I was around, you know, I started to come into the knowledge of myself, becoming a 5%er around 91, 92, and then I was around other MCs who I just admired, and I wanted to do what they did. And so I taught myself, I willed myself how to rhyme, but then I had guidance from a local DC MC named Black Indian, who you guys may or may not know. But Josh, as I know him, taught me how to freestyle. And then I learned how to battle. I became a real fierce battle MC, and I was battling people like Funk CU and, you know, Boogeyman Ghost, and these names are familiar to those in the DMV, but these were some of the best freestylers in the world. I was up there with them, and I was hanging with them. Yeah. But I will say that I tried to challenge a young lion by the name of YU, who you might know from Diamond District, and he mocked me up. And I tell Mike, I know him as Mike, I tell YU with that all the time when I see him. Yo, you're the best lyricist in the DC area.
Yo,
man.
Shout out to YU. I really love YU, man. And I think he's also one of the most slept on MCs from this area. But there's a lot of really dope talent here, and YU is definitely
he's up there. So going from that whole battle rapping thing, I joined the crew known as Dumb High. My man Haji up in Philadelphia, he spearheaded it. It's his production company, Dumb High Production, and that's spelled DUMHI. And we put out a trio of projects, and I've done guest verses, we've done mixtapes, and, you know, we did a mini tour, you know what I mean? We got locked up on tour, you know what I mean? It's a long story about our history, but I joined that effort, and we did our last project together like in 2009. And honestly, I really dove deep into my journalism. Now I've been a music journalist now for 20 years. You know, I've been doing this for a long time. I got a break in politics, but then I kind of pivoted to the whole hip hop thing. And about 12 years ago, I started writing for MTV News and working with Sway and those guys and Ramon Dukes and all those people. And my current supervisor, Alvin Blanco, and I, we were, you know, young, hungry, not young really, but hungry journalists trying to get on. And now I am the senior editor of I1 Digital, which is part of Urban One Incorporated, which is the largest Black-owned media company in the world. And you can find my writing at HipHopWired.com and CassiusLife.com, where I run a column called Spirit.ed where I talk about cocktails and mixology and things like that. So
I've been cocktails.
Yeah, that's my thing, man. It's a hobby of mine.
That's his thing too.
That's my thing too.
Oh, really? We need to talk, bro.
We'll
I would
talk.
love to have, and I'm starting a podcast about spirits and cocktails.
Oh, hit me up.
So we need to talk, and so me and Outlaw coming to you soon. You know what I mean?
There you go. I like it.
Yeah, but the synergy is cool because as a former MC, and I'm gonna tell you something. The former thing kind of bugs me when I say it because I still rhyme. I still write, and I'm still nice. I just haven't decided whether or not I want to take time away from my career, which is so busy,
right?
And record, songs. But I write lines I write 16 a day.
Yeah. Oh, that's what's up.
I still freestyle in the shower.
Yeah.
I'm still imagining my foes out there.
You probably write more than I do.
Why aren't you getting them featured on one of your records?
Because I'm lazy, man. And I'm the fault here. I would have loved to rap with Yinka, man. I mean, I love his music, and I've been wanting to do it. It's just hard to get away from my career. My career is, I'm balls in, man. Like I really am deep in it, and I care about it,
man. It's tough to wear multiple hats like that,
As you get older too.
But what I will say about Wise is like the DC hip hop scene is fairly small, and so when I came here, in the early like maybe 2009 when I was moving here, 2008 2009, I was introduced to Wise through my homie Quiz, who I rhyme with, my new money homeboy. Introduced me to Neil McLean, who does photography and graphic design. He did my first logo. And so when I would roll with Neil, he would point people out. Yo, you in DC, you gotta know this person. Yo, you in DC, you gotta know this person. And one of the first people he said was Wise. He was like, yo, you gotta meet this cat Wise. And in my, just different capacities of being around hip hop as a fan, going to Diamond District shows and these people's shows, I would always see Wise. Whether it was I was an artist and I was at a festival and I was on a flyer, I would see Wise. Like this cat is like, he's like Waldo when it comes to like, a Forrest Gump when it comes to like the DC hip hop scene. So it's cool. I always would see you, brother. So it's great to have you on the show.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here. I really am appreciative of this opportunity to talk about something like this, man.
Thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule to be here and join us and discuss this artist.
Right.
So so why are we doing a put you up for Planet Asia's The Medicine?
So it's kind of like a three birds with one stone type of situation. First and foremost, I had a cool Where Were You for this album. So it popped up in my Spotify and I was like, I forgot about this album. And then I was like, it'd be cool to talk about it. So my Where Were You, one. Two, Planet Asia is somebody who we haven't spoken about on this podcast. Not. And it's interesting. There's a whole channel or vein of hip hop that we haven't really spoken on much, which is this like this California Strong Arm Steady, Mad Lib, Stone's Throw, this whole like chamber of hip hop. We don't even touch it.
This is true.
And so this was an opportunity for us to open up that vein.
I can see that.
And third, I felt like there were some good ties to bring Wise in. I felt like, Wise would have some good insights on this record for multiple reasons, which we'll talk about. So those are kind of my three reasons.
So, all right. So I guess we'll get into the Where Were Yous and I'll start because obviously I've heard of the name Planet Asia. I've never listened to this album. This album came out in 2006. And again, I say this every single time, but for listeners of the podcast should know that I was pretty much checked out of hip hop 2006.
Right.
2006, this album comes out. I'm listening to classic rock and I'm listening to jazz music. And then in the next year, that's when I'm getting into Fela Kuti and some African sounds, some Brazilian sounds and things like that. But I'm thick in classic rock and in jazz music. And so, if it's hip hop, it needs to be an artist that I know and love. So Q-Tip comes out with his album in 2008 or, the Roots are coming out with an album or Mos Def, they want to do something, I'll check it out.
Right.
Aside from that, maybe Ghostface is coming out. I'll check that out, right?
That's true.
I'm listening to Kanye on the radio, whatever else is on the radio in the club, but I'm checked out of hip hop at this point. Yeah. I'm done. I think I might still be making beats, but I'm still kind of phasing out at this point. So that's kind of
because Firecracker would have been around this time.
It would have been around this time.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I was. That's pretty much it.
So Wise, where were you when you heard this album?
I got it. It's funny to hear Outlaw say that he okay, I gotta say this, and I'm not knocking you for saying
go ahead,
this
go
either,
ahead.
but it's so weird to me when I hear fans of the culture say they checked out.
Yeah.
I never checked out.
Yeah.
Like I never.
He never
gave up
checked
on
out either.
Yeah,
I couldn't do
I
it.
don't know how that feels. I have so many peers my age, maybe a little younger or even older, who say, I don't even listen to it anymore. I'm like, how?
Yeah.
It's still
I
dope.
thought I would too.
And I try to put them on, and they're like, nah, I'm cool. Like they just refuse it. But anyway, where I was in 06, I guess Planet Asia was a name on my radar because of his Definition of Ill single that Madlib produced. I don't know if you ever heard that song, but Definition of Ill was an original single that Asia put out. I think it was like 97, 98. Don't quote me, I could be wrong. Okay. But Madlib did a remix of it. And good gosh, like it's to this day, I can hear this song and it still gives me the same goosebumps it did when I first heard it. You know what I mean? And I said, that kid is special, right? And then a few years later, I kept following this kid, you know what I mean? Then I was, around the early 2000s, I was going out to the West, to the good life, and I was going out there trying to as a young, writer and 5%er, I was trying to find guys to build with, but I was also trying to find MCs to rap with freestyle-wise, because I heard that some of the best freestylers were out there, but then people were like, you know about this kid, Planet Asia? And I was like, yeah, I know about him. I heard about him. And then so when 06 rolls around, this comes out, it was so weird because, I knew who Dilated Peoples were. I knew who Evidence was.
Right.
I love Evidence as a rapper, right?
Yeah.
But I had no idea that he made beats. So when I saw produced
Exactly.
fully by Evidence, I was like, oh, man.
Yo.
And they were kind of dope.
Yeah.
This guy can rap. And I don't know if you ever seen Ev perform. He's a great performer. But I didn't know he was a guy who was on the buttons. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So 06, I was here in the DC area. I was still trying to figure out whether or not I wanted to rap or not. You know what I mean? I would stick with Thumb High. I was still rhyming. I was still actively rapping. But at the same time, I was having that juxtaposition of do I chase rap or do I, get serious about paying my mortgage? You know what I mean? You know what I mean? And then, I think the foot race of dream versus career had to come, fruition. And so, but along the way, music like Planet Asia, it's like the medicine was my soundtrack, man. So when I heard it, the first song I heard was Get Active, I think it was, right? And then I heard the title track as well, I think it was. And I was thinking to myself, Evidence produced this?
Right.
I remember turning to my little brother yo, did you know Evidence made beats? And we were bugging out because nah, we didn't know.
Right.
We just knew Ab as a MC.
Exactly.
So yeah, that's where I was with it, man. And it didn't stick with me as much as the other albums from 06 did, you know what I mean? But it was something that I did rock a lot, and that we'll get into the songs later. But there's a song in particular on this album that I really love, and I'll explain why once we get deeper to the convo.
Word, that's what's up. So my word for you is long. I'm gonna try to condense it, but the short of it, I went out in 05 to Cali to do an internship, work for Interscope. I was an intern. So I'm out there, I'm trying to get on doing my music. I'm kind of moonlighting as a rapper, and by day I'm this intern. And so I walk into Starbucks, and I go to order some coffee. It's light-skinned joint, what I'm saying there. So I order my coffee, and she says, "Do you want anything else?" And I'm like, "No, I'm good." She's like, "Do you want my number?" Right? I'm like, "Yeah." Right? So I get shorty number. I'm chilling. I'm posted up. So dude comes to bring me my coffee, and he goes, "Hey, yo, you rap?" Just randomly, right? And I'm sitting there I'm like, huh? And he's like, you carry yourself like you rap. Do you rap? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, all right, hold on a second. So he leaves and he walks away. He comes back with a CD and he goes, yo, my name's Porus. My number's on the CD. If you like anything on there, call me. I'm like, cool. So take the number, I take the CD, and I bounce with my little coffee, and I'm like, okay, this is weird. So I finish my work day, whatever, get in the car, put the CD in. CD kind of slamming. The joint's kind of dope, but I'm an unpaid intern and I ain't making no money. I'm just a rapper by night. So I end up calling the dude, and he's like, yeah, man, did you like any of the beats? I'm like, yo, the beats was cool, whatever. I'm like, but I'll make my own beats, right? He's like, oh, you produce too? I'm like, yeah. He's like, all right, well, let's go digging. I'm like, all right. He's like, all right, well, near the coffee shop where I work, there's this record store I go to go digging. So if you game, next weekend we'll go digging. I'm like, cool. So I pack up and everything, and I ship out to where he's at, and so we go digging, we find some records, everything's cool. So at the end, I'm playing him the samples that I found. He's playing me the samples he found. He's like, yo, bro, I don't know what you thought you were gonna, make a beat out of on this record. So we're talking shit to each other. So at the end, he goes, yeah, man, this was really cool. He's like, I gotta go back to the homie Ev's crib because that's where I'm crashing. And I said, evidence from Dilated Peoples? And he goes, you know Dilated Peoples? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, yeah, I'm crashing at his crib. I was like, what?
Word.
And he's like, yeah, I mean, I didn't know you were hip, but since you are, if you want, I can ask him if, you can come through, you can play him your shit, whatever. And I'm like, hell yeah. Right. So, that whole exchange happens, and he asks Ev's cool with it. So, they invite me to the crib. So
that's cool.
Maybe like a week or so goes by, and I go and I meet up at Ev's crib. He's got this crib, Venice Beach, near the water, super nice, little spot. Studio in the crib and everything. So, I get to the spot, I'm chilling. So, he introduces me to Ev. Yo, Ev, yeah, this dude, his name's Disaster. He's dope. He got bars, blah, 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 blah. I was like, oh yeah, cool. He's like, yeah, yo, play me something. I was like, play me something. So I'm like, all right. So I had this EP that I had made in Oakland with this producer that didn't believe in sampling. So like his sound was very keyboard heavy. Like it was very, the opposite of what you would think Evidence and Dilated People would sound like is what this guy's production sounded like. So I had like 5 records I had just done in Oakland. So we put the CD on, and you could tell Ev's like, he's like not feeling it, right? He's tuned out. Like, you know what I'm saying? So they're playing the records. He's like, oh yeah, that's cool, that's cool. So the last record on the CD was, I had made a song over a Just Blaze beat. So, he's flicking through, yeah, it's cool. So the last joint comes on, and he's like, he kind of sits up, and he's like, this you? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, oh yeah. He's like, who did this beat? I'm like, oh nah, like, this is Just Blaze beat. I just did a song over Just Blaze beat. He goes, oh yeah. He's like, that's tight, that's cool. He's like, all right, yo, you mind if I play you something? And I'm like, sure. So takes my CD out. He goes, so, a lot of people don't know this, but my favorite rapper is Planet Asia. And he goes, and I got to work on an album where all beats made by me with my favorite rapper. And he was like, wow, you want to hear it?
Like,
and I'm like, yeah. So he slides it in, and we sit back, and I listened to almost this entire album. It was probably 80% done at the time. And he just plays all the records. And so that was like my Where Were You? I'm sitting there in real time at Evidence's studio. He gets a call from Alchemist, because Alchemist and Evidence, they grew up together. So they're like best of friends. So Alchemist calls, he's like, yeah, yo, I got this dude Disaster in here. Yeah, whatever, blah, 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 blah. They laughing, kikiing and shit. He's smoking, and we listened to the whole project. That's where I was the first time I heard this album.
Wow.
Well, he beats us, right?
Yeah, certainly. That's a dope story, man.
Yeah, it was random. But when it popped up in my Spotify, like, oh yeah, do you want to listen to this album? I'm like, I completely forgot about this album, but I was definitely there before it dropped.
So let's talk about that. Why did you completely forget about this album?
That's a good question. So I think that this vein of hip hop, a lot of it, if it's a single artist and not a group, it doesn't have staying power with me.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is like, it doesn't have a lot of music that makes me connect with the artist himself. So if it's just bars for the sake of bars, but it's one artist, I typically don't gravitate to it.
Interesting.
I'll listen to a Strong Arm Steady album, the one with the Mad Lib beats, because it's 3 niggas and they're just barring up. I'm cool with that.
Yeah, can I jump in real quick? Because he kind of took my thunder a little bit by saying what he said, but I could understand what he means, because I didn't quite forget about the album, because I always, he's like one of my favorite rappers, right? But the thing is, that kind of like bar heavy MCing is my favorite kind of music to listen to. Like literally, I hate this. I don't know how people say this, but rapping for the sake of rapping. Right, I like music like that.
We talk about that.
Yeah. So I like that kind of music though. So I like lyrics, right? I'm a lyrics first person. Like I want to hear you use the language in such a way and paint visuals or have effect over the beat. You know, or I don't really care about the beat as much as I do the lyrics. You know, the rhyme got to be hard for me, and if it is, I'm all in, right? And so for me, that kind of music did stick with me. However, to Yinka's point, Strong Arm Steady was my favorite crew at that time. Around that 05, 06, 07 era, ahead of the Madlib album, they were like my favorite crew. Because like you said, 3 distinct MCs, very different MCs, you know. And then Planet Asia was like a slight extension of that crew because it did plenty of songs with them and Tafari and other offshoot members of that whole set. So I didn't forget about it, but I can see how someone would. Because it was very atypical of what was in that time period. Like this, like you said earlier, like you fell out of favor with hip hop unless it was a big name. Planet Asia was not a big name. It
was an artist that I had already liked.
Right. But see, you know what I mean? But you understand, but at that time, Planet Asia was not a household name, and he still isn't really. But at that time, he definitely wasn't. You know what I mean? But if you knew, you knew.
And to one of your earlier points, right? Like if you knew with Planet Asia. But for me, I was a Cali Agents fan, and I got onto Cali Agents through Roscoe. So Roscoe was my guy, and then Planet Asia was the B, almost like Mos Def and Talib Kweli. People got on to Talib Kweli, but it was Mos Def first. So you know, Planet Asia to me was not second fiddle, but he was the Scottie Pippen to Roscoe as a Jordan for me. And then Evidence was the Scottie Pippen to Rocker Our Science for me in Dilated Peoples. So when Evidence pressed play and said, I made these beats, just like you said, I had no idea the nigga made beats.
I was blown
away. I was like, wait, you made all of these beats? You know what I'm saying? And he's like, oh, well, Alchemist helped me on like one of them, but you know, I made all these beats. So I think there's just multiple things that were a mind-blowing kind of gumbo in that moment. But again, like you said, like, I don't know if it had the staying power for me.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I mean, only thing I can really speak to is that to kind of go back to your point about like me checking out, I think the thing for me is I was losing my patience for artists that were kind of taking what had previously been done and like mastering it without really, in my mind, without really doing anything new with it and without being wholly distinct, right? So we talked about this when we talked about like Lil Brother, right? And so, and the other reason why
I totally disagree with you about that, but that's fine.
You do, right? And like, I think one of the reasons why I'm checking out is because people who know the types of music that I like, they're pushing these artists for me. And I'm like, I'm listening to it. I'm like, I don't really hear anything new here. I'm bored with this. Like your music isn't teaching me anything. And maybe that's just where my headspace was at the time. Another artist would have been someone like Lupe Fiasco. And the thing is like, if you're just like, oh, Lupe Fiasco exists, cool. If you're like, no, Lupe Fiasco exists, he's dope, and you need to check him out. I'm like, but why? Like, why are you guys like wasting my time with this? Like, listen to all this other music that I think is really fascinating, right? And it sounds like a knock. It doesn't necessarily, it shouldn't come off as that. It's more like people keep bringing things to me that I'm like, and then telling me that, oh no, I need to like this. And it's just kind of like, yo, leave me alone. Like, let me just be in my space, right?
I get that.
And I think the thing for Planet Asia, and to kind of tease how I feel about this album and this artist, it's not that it's bad. First of all, it's definitely like not for me. And I think the reason why is just because while I recognize that he has talent, like he's got bars, he's got lyrics, he is nice. I think for me, especially now, like going back to listen to an album that's released in 2006, it's kind of like cool, but I feel like there's a lot of other artists who kind of are doing like similar things. And that's an unfair assessment from me, considering the fact that like, I don't know who all these other artists are, but there's nothing about it that really grabs me and be like, oh no, like this is worth your time to check out. And so it's easy for me to just be like, all right, well, cool, I'll listen to it and then move on to something else. Move on to something else that I find just more interesting. And I just wanted to say that to kind of explain that, like, you know, it's not personal coming from me. It's not like I have a strong disinterest or a strong dislike in this type of stuff. It's just like, cool, it's great. And it's just like, there's other great things I kind of want to get into that aren't this. You know?
I think something else we've spoken about on this podcast though, and I think that really resonates here is I think also you have to kind of engage with the perspective of the artist in some ways.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons I thought Wise would be a perfect person here, right, is because Planet Asia also is a 5%er.
Right.
And so there's probably lines and wisdom and shit that I totally missed that probably went over my head listening to it. But I'm a Cali cat.
Yeah.
So a lot of the stuff that he's talking about just from a Cali perspective resonates with me. Neither of those things would probably resonate with you. So I think it'd be interesting to hear, just kind of how maybe certain things stuck for each of the three of us, just given our perspectives.
Well, let's get into the critical reception before we do any of that. Wikipedia doesn't have that much for it. They give us a 3 out of 5 from which source was it?
OK Player.
It was OK Player.
Yeah.
All right. Which would have been OK Player was kind of on and popping at that point, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was doing its
thing. I mean, you're a journalist at the time. Like,
it was doing its thing at that point. I mean, it was definitely somebody. It was a site, or rather a place where, this kind of album would be on its radar and get that kind of like recognition, or rather some sort of notice.
I saw mixed reviews. I saw 7 out of 10. I saw 2 out of 5. I saw 4 out of 5. So, I mean,
to your point, though, it wasn't a lot of like quantifiable, reviews out there. Like I didn't see much. And at the time, I was a journalist, like trying to get on, right? Mm-hmm. So I read other reviews. Mm-hmm. And I didn't see much on this, and I didn't write one myself, obviously.
Well, then, so then let me ask you, as two hip hop artists who are in this scene at the time, the general hip hop scene, and then particularly might be into someone like Planet Asia. You got into him. I forget how did you get into Planet Asia?
I learned it was a Madlib song. It was a Stone's Throw single that Peanut Butter Wolf put out, and it was a Madlib remix of a song called Definition of Ill. That's how I got into him. And
then you got into him by way of, we'll just say, Dilated Peoples.
Right? Beat Junkies. I listened to a lot of Beat Junkies stuff, so in the early, it's probably around the same time as you. He was featured on a bunch of the Beat Junkies tapes.
So as two hip hop artists who are in the scene from that point of view, what did the scene think about Planet Asia and about this album at the time?
So I would say it's interesting, right? Like your perception of how you perceive something has to do with who brings you in the door. Yeah. And the reason I say that is because 3 years later, 2-3 years later, he would release a record called Pain Language with DJ Muggs. And Muggs he's Cypress Hill. Yeah. He's the godfather of all the people in this era. So there was a lot more writing about it and a lot more coverage because of who brought him in the door.
Makes sense.
But Evidence was not known as a producer at this point in time. So the person that brought him in the door, I don't think that there was a lot of talk unless you really cared about these surrounding acts, which I did. So I
think a lot of the guys that I was around at the time, they were like lyricists, rappers, freestylers, battlers, what have you. And they sort of put Planet Asia in a sort of rarefied air in that space, because that's really what he did. I mean, if there was ever a category in hip hop called straight spitting, he would be one of the architects of it. You know?
Right.
He would be one of the people who would be the founder of that style and sound. Right?
All these Griselda cats and or even Rock Marciano, like they're all like descendants of Planet Asia.
Right, just straight up rhyming hard as you can, well as you can, lyrically as you can over dusty or dope production. That's really what this is, right? Yeah. And if you were somebody who was like familiar in ciphers and freestyling and that kind of, boom bap style, especially in 06, this guy, you gravitated towards him because he had that aesthetic in him.
Yep.
But that's the weird thing about this album, is that it's not all just that.
Right.
And so I don't know, I can't really quite remember how many people like received this album in particular, but he himself, my peers, liked him as an MC.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
I agree.
So we'll get into some highlights and some lowlights. Yinka, why?
I'll start it off. I'll say highlights is, I mean, really it's him. Planet Asia's rapping consistency, it's like throughout the whole album, it's like, it's strong. Like that's one thing that you can say about Planet Asia, is that he raps well, no matter the platform. Like he himself, if the beat isn't that great, or if the hook is awful, or some of the lines are cringe, he himself is in pure form. Diction, delivery, voice, metaphors, similes, all of those things are there, right? So Planet Asia himself as a rapper is always in pure form on his album, all across it. Now, for me, I think too, the features were wise as well because they were very smart. Like he had Black Dot, who was in a very muted role almost. I mean, I don't want to say that he out-rapped him, but he did, And there's a particular song on here that I know we'll get in track for track, but there's a song called Get Active. And we were just talking about Strong Arm Steady, and Strong Arm Steady, but two of the members are on that song with him. And, this is when I really got into like Strong Arm Steady, and they had this whole thing called SASG, which was Strong Arm Steady Gang, and it was pretty much the Far Eye, who else? Field Agony, Mickey Slick, and his whole crew. You know what I mean? Who else was in that crew? It was so many. DJ Khalil, all those offshoot people. You know what I'm saying? They were all like kind of connected in a way. You know what I mean? And so I guess for me, seeing that song on there, showing how tight that West Coast, bond was, because I mean, this guy's from Fresno, you know what I mean? Yeah. And he's clicked up with people from Southern California, right? And it just made California seem like this big giant,
right? Like the record Liquid Fusion off the Loop Pack album, where like you had like the Alcoholics, and you had Madlib and Loop Pack and all of them together,
right? It just felt like California was coming together really strong, and then with Evidence like really helming the whole thing, it just made me feel like, okay, Cali got something to say. Because it was a time, we didn't know that they could do that. I mean, we knew kind of with our hieroglyphics and all that, I mean, we knew Cali had some...
What time is this? What year is this?
I would say 06, 03.
That's interesting.
Yeah, 03, 06. We knew they had it, but we didn't really like, as an East Coaster, right? You got to think, I'm coming from straight East Coast bias, right? Yeah. And I'm still listening to this going, I see the skill in this, you know what I mean? And that's what stuck the most with me. When I heard this album, I just felt like they know exactly what they're doing. And then so he brings in Rasco on the album. And then Evidence brings in Vodka Iron Science, some Dilated on there. I mean, it was all these, like I said earlier, it felt like Cali was like becoming the Avengers. You know what I mean? and coming through.
I feel like, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm sure you have more knowledge on this than I do, but I actually feel like, you talked about there's a whole lane of hip hop that we haven't really discussed on this podcast. You're right. The closest that we've come to discussing it, though, would actually probably be on Sound Bombing, right? Because Dilated Peoples are on Sound Bombing. Right. We're also on the Sway and Tech album. And I feel like a lot of that sound, like there's a lot of that kind of, we'll call it like underground, raw, real hip hop, just to throw a generic term on it, right? There's a lot of artists that come out, from Cali that are like that. Like you said, like Beat Junkies are from Cali, right?
Yeah, and I think to your point, the only reason we got to see them in that way is because DJ Babu is in Dilated Peoples. Yeah. So he's giving them these inside looks that other niggas in Cali ain't getting. Yeah. So that's why we were randomly seeing them. It's not because Dilated People was way better at rapping than all these other people.
Gotcha.
They just had the inside connect.
Yeah. So I just, it's interesting though that like, I would have thought it would have been before 2005, 2006, just because I feel like when I was in high school, I used to rap online a lot, little rap boards, little forums and stuff like that. And I just feel like a lot of like that backpacker hip hop that we know, I feel like a lot of it sounds like it actually came from Cali, from artists like this.
Well, I think Freestyle Fellowship were really the people who were kind of helming that, and they were doing that where they were. And then the folks that in LA in the Good Life, right? So, but I just feel like the foothold of that was what predates this.
Okay. All right.
So,
well, I think for I'll say this, and I know what you're getting at, because for me, again, like I said, I was deep in hip hop at that time because I was still doing it at that level. I was still trying to record music, what have you, and I was around people who were way into the culture, like super deep, right? I'm talking diggers and all that kind of stuff, right? I was still consuming it at a clip that I still can't keep up with today, even with streaming, but I was still at it at that time. We looked towards the West Coast, and if it wasn't, Hieroglyphics or that crew or, someone else, we didn't really regard anyone else.
There was Jurassic 5, right? They're a Cali group. Yeah. There's also She Keeps On Passing Me By. What was it?
Farside.
Farside was way predates that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's 90s.
Yeah. But then okay. Yeah. All right. So you're really specifically talking about like late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah. So I'm saying early 2000s. I'm just saying we just kind of like, I don't know what happened, man, because it was a time where you thought that all of the lyrics were coming out of like, the raucous era, like, that's East Coast.
Yeah.
Eastern Conference records,
Right.
and that's East Coast. We're thinking like
this. I like to hear it from an actual journalist because I feel like we from California felt that way.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like we really felt like at the time, I mean, and honestly, all I listened to was like Company Flow and people like that, Army of the Pharaohs. Yeah. Get Our Mind Tricks and all that kind of stuff. I was straight on this side of the map when it came to my hip hop. But then Planet Asia was an outlier in that sense because he was very, very dope, you know? And he even says on one of his songs that he sounds like a dude. He has a song with Ghostface that I can't think the name of right now. But he even says on the song that people think he's, from New York, the way he talks, but he's from California. He says it on the song.
Because I mean, I as a Californian, I don't know that I knew any 5%ers from California before.
Yeah.
Like I thought that was a New York thing.
Yeah, same. Same. And honestly, when like Born Outlaw and, E-Rule and all those guys came out, it was like a revelation to us as 5%ers on the East Coast. Like, oh, it's a whole lot of us on the other side too.
Yeah.
And it's so weird because as you know, growing up or living at both sides, they're vastly different,
Right.
How they ride, how they dress, how they talk, how they speak, how they move. All those things are vastly different, right? So for you to have that perception of us and us to have the perception of y'all, it makes sense if you think about it. And so for us in the late 90s, early 2000s, Company Flow, Raucous. I mean, remember the Raucous 50? They put out 50 albums. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That was like a time in hip hop where we thought, as if you were an underground hip hop fan, you thought East Coast ruled and governed over all. You didn't see it any other way.
Yeah.
You couldn't see it any other way.
Because I remember even when Little Brother came out, everybody thought they were from New York. It was like, oh, no, these dudes, they got to be from New York. And then it's like, they're from North Carolina. Like,
all
what?
places, right?
Yeah, it's like, they're from where?
Right.
So,
yeah.
Well, we should get on to the rest of your all's highlights. So, did you have anything else to do?
Well, honestly, highlights for me, I think, like I said, I'm a big fan of the song Get Active. I mean, that's probably my favorite record on there. It's the one I go to now, even when I go back and listen to old Planet Asia. That's the one I really go back to. And I also love the title track as well, The Medicine. It's, in fact, Get Active and The Medicine were the first two songs I heard from the album. Okay. I don't even know where I was. I think I was listening to like Knicks Radio or something. Whatever that Baltimore station in Morgan State. I forgot the name of it. They would play like really dusty underground hip hop all the time. And I think that's where I first heard it. And my little brother, used to tape the shows and we would like just like run it back. And The Medicine was one of those songs that to this day, I'm talking about it right now and I hear the beat in my head. You know what I'm saying? It's same with Get Active. And it's what I love about that song, Get Active. And I guess we'll go track for track later, but it's just, I love to hear Planet Asia push himself as a rapper and do something different. And he did something different on that record. Yeah. And I think that's what, I didn't know he could do that. That's another thing about this album too. I'm hearing him rap at different textures and styles and playing a little bit with his voice a little bit. That was the first time I really noticed PA could do that. Beforehand, I didn't know he could do that. So
what are your overarching highlights?
I think mine are largely the same. Planet Asia, he just rapped his ass off on this project. Evidence, just because I didn't even know he made beats. So for him to produce somebody's whole album when I didn't even know he was a producer is huge. The features, particularly Prodigy, because I just love Prodigy and it's always great to hear Prodigy. But some of these other cats, these GCM cats that I wasn't even familiar with, like Killer Ben, and Shake the Mayor and all these other cats from GCM. It's like, oh wow, this really is a crew and they really got bars. So I'd say those are my other overarching ones. What you got?
So the only thing I have overarching highlights is the I just kind of like the combination of like sounds and styles. Like it if you were to listen to this album without any knowledge of like where it was from, you might think it was some cats from New York or whatever like that, right? But then they also do have like a Cali vibe to them as well. I think there's just like a combination of just multiple different things coming together, which some of it works for me, some of it doesn't. But like the fact that it's all there is like a highlight. Just kind of taking little bits and pieces here that work. And so, like I said, like the idea that you have, or like you said, the idea that you have Evidence, a guy who raps, but now he's making the beats. And so now we're getting his interpretation on music and things like that. Just a combination of just things that just, you're not committed to one specific, like you're it's like, all right, you're from Fresno, but you're not committed to one specific thing because you're from Fresno. You're just like, no, I'm going to take different things that I like from whatever, and I'm going to put them on this album. And I think largely it works for what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
Not sure if that makes sense.
No, it does. And to your point, I think one of the things that I also liked, and I think I cheated a little bit because I got to hear it in the studio, but just the way the album is mixed in terms of those textures that you're talking about, like some of the sounds come at you in almost like in 3D, right? Okay. Like you'll have a guitar and then a horn stab that's coming from over here, and I think just the spread of the mix is really good.
Yeah, that's another thing too. Sonically, it was like, for me, it wasn't like dusty, SP1200 type beats,
right,
Like, it wasn't
like flat.
It wasn't beat miners. You know what I mean? Like, he wasn't rapping over beat miners type production, and he wasn't really rapping over, I don't know, Pete Rock like production. Right. This was something a little different because it's a mix of a little keyboard-itis in here, but it's also straight up boom bap. There's deep samples. You know what I mean?
Yep.
There's a lot of everything happening, and like you said, the mix on the beat was so like loud, and he himself, how they mixed his voice in the record, he's at top of the mix, you know what I mean? And he already has a big voice. It cuts through every beat that he's on. Yeah. Like, Planet Asia is rapping when he's on the joint because his voice is like piercing through the beat. Not in a bad way, but just in a very authoritative way, Yeah. You know he's there, Yeah. And that's another highlight for me too, that his authority as an MC is so evident and on display throughout the record, even if the song itself ain't my cup of tea,
Gotcha. So some overarching lowlights?
Well, for me, I'll say it.
Okay.
The R&B attempts, like remember that was the thing, Yeah. Like the early aughts, man. Everybody had to have a record where you could try to.
You had to have a girl joint.
Yeah, have a girl joint pandering to that audience, and you know what the thing is they never sounded like good. They always sounded like an attempt. Like, how. A guy who can't hoop, right? And he get on the court, right? And you just know he can't hoop, but he just goes for it anyway. You know what I mean? That's what that whole era is, man. They're just heaving up shots, man, missing the backboard. And the song I'm talking about in particular, I'll save the title, but it should be known what the song is.
Oh, I know what it is.
Yeah, everybody knows what it is. Yeah, that song is horrible. And it's like, and it's not, and he himself really tried hard to make it work.
The funny thing is, I actually liked that song back when the joint came out.
Yeah.
But I have to say, I'm a sucker for this whole aesthetic. I love like chopped soul samples. Yeah. Where like then they double down and have somebody sing on it. And I actually really love Jonelle personally, just because she has this like around the way girl type of thing, kind of like Miss Jones and some of the where like I just like her voice, but. You're absolutely right. And the only thing that this song reminds me of, which cracks me up, is in the early days of getting on Twitter, Alchemist and Evidence used to tweet at each other, and they would joke all the time. And one of the lines of jokes that they used to have was Planet Asia pickup lines, right? And so they would tweet each other and they'd be like, "What's up, my astrological goddess? What's up? You look like Mother Isis today."
That's pretty much what the song is too. The song is really bad, because it's so beneath who he is, But also maybe it's just who he is too. And I gotta accept sometimes that there are people who want to do these songs for their own reasons, right?
Yeah. But I mean, it's interesting though, right? Because so he gets on the first record and he's like talking about bitches dropping their ass and how he's gonna pimp them in Fresno, and then he's got this record, and I almost don't like it and I like it. Like I don't like it from the perspective of like he's dropping super knowledge and calling the chicks queens and he loves them and he needs to elevate them, and then on the next one he's pimping them out. But then at the same time, niggas be doing that though, like for real.
That is true. So. Like I mean, it's hard to say. It's complicated, right? It's hard to give it one, brush stroke of like what it means, really. You know what I mean? Honestly, it's kind of hard to hear sometimes. You know what I mean? It's also hard to ignore. So lowlights, that's one of them. I didn't really care for like the opening song. The opening song,
really?
Nah, but I'm gonna tell you why. And I'm gonna tell you this is real. Petty of me, at the time at 06, right? I didn't really like loud ass, like what I would always call it, the whistle. Like this, I didn't like loud ass samples in my music. I like muted, quiet, I wanted to be low, muddy. That sample when it comes on the first album song, Prescription, it's so freaking piercing. Like it's like, and I don't like it. It just turns me off. And what's funny is Asia is spitting his ass off of this record, right? Like he is going in, but I hate the beginning so much of it, like because he's rapping a cappella, right? And that sound is in my head, and I can hear it in my head now, and it's like I want to just hit skip in my brain, right? But I tolerate the song because the next joint, Dick Ropes, is so good. You know what I mean? So it's one of those things where I just don't really love the opener. I think I would have arranged this album a lot differently if I had it my way.
One of my overarching lowlights is sequencing as well. Do you have any overarching lowlights?
I would say sequencing is definitely an overarching lowlight, and I would say another one. I don't know who was the executive producer. I don't know if it was Evidence or it was PA, or maybe them together. But like, I think they made several decisions that I definitely would not have made. One of them being the way this album was sequenced, and so just executive production in general, I think I would say might be a low light.
All right, so I have two. So the first is, I'm not a big fan of the songwriting. Not the lyric. Lyrics are fine, right? But some of the songwriting I felt was a little generic. And this is what I was talking about when I say that, you have MCs or you have artists who are kind of taking what hip hop artists were doing like back 6 years ago. And they've refined it, but they haven't really. I said 6 years ago. So like 98, 99. So I was like, you've taken like the underground sound, like that rocket sound from like 98, 99, and you've refined it and it's polished, but you haven't really done anything else new with it. And I feel like some of the song structures, some of the hooks, like what they like, it's really, really, really basic stuff. Now, at the time, if I were still into hip hop, I probably wouldn't mind. But given that I'm going back to listen to this and I'm like, nah, that's kind of a little boring to me for some of it. I thought that there could have been more creativity in terms of how some of the songs were layered and structured. The other overarching lowlight is that the features from the prominent artists, I like, if you didn't tell me that was Black Thought, I wouldn't know.
Oh, yeah.
And if you didn't tell me that was Prodigy, it would have taken me a while. Wait, is that Prodigy? It does not sound like a Prodigy feature the way other Prodigy features sound like Prodigy features.
Okay.
To me, I could hear it, but I was kind of like, wait, is that? I guess that's Prodigy. And so like the way that they sounded, they didn't sound like their normal selves to me. Especially Black Thought. Like I had to guess that was Black Thought on the track because it said it. But I'm like, this doesn't sound like him lyrically. Yeah. And it doesn't really sound like his voice. So you say it's like, are you imitating Black Thought? Like you just put his credit there? Like, I don't know. Yeah. So that was something that was a little disappointing. But those are my own.
And I'll double down on what you're saying in that like Black Thought's somebody that when you see his name, you're like, oh shit. You see him on the schedule and you're like, okay, we got to rest up for this game, right? Yeah, so like, he gave him a throwaway verse. I'm gonna just keep it at that. Like that's a throwaway Black Thought verse. Yeah. Additionally, I want to say, Krondon. I'm not a huge fan of Krondon's verse here, and I like Krondon like as a person. Like I've met Krondon. He's a cool cat.
One of the coolest.
Yeah, super nice guy. But just wasn't really feeling him here. But I thought it was dope what he was talking about. His whole story of like how he was a promoter and he was promoting these other artists and they weren't even as good as him. And I love the story. Just what wasn't really feeling.
If Krondon had a fan club, I'd be the president, the CEO, the COO. I am a huge Krondon fan, and I could talk ad nauseum about how great I think he is as a songwriter and a ghostwriter. If you didn't know that about him, he wrote songs for Snoop Dogg and a whole lot of other people. He's like,
but we will fight on In Search of Stoney Jackson because I feel like there are multiple songs that Krondon ruined on.
Oh man!
And I love you, Krondon. You're a great dude.
Oh my God!
We'll talk about that.
We'll talk about that. Yeah, Kron Dizzoline is one of my favorite rappers in the world, man.
He's a really cool cat,
and he also is a amazing human being, like one of the warmest individuals you ever meet in your life. Really like seriously, that's not hyperbole at all.
And my last, because we were talking about features, my last one that I'll highlight that I was not really feeling is Defari. And I love Defari. To me, as one of the best rap voices. Like I've always loved his voice. I love the fact that he still was a teacher at the same time while he was putting out albums with these amazing acts. But man, I wasn't feeling his verse on this.
I'm a big Dafar Hayru fan, and I am, but that wasn't his best performance, though.
Yeah.
So do you want to just say our track highlights, or do you actually want to go track for track? I'll leave it up to you because both of you guys are more familiar with this album than I am.
I think track for track works because I think it's a lot to talk about on each track.
All right, so then what we're going to do is we'll discuss each song, and then we can say whether or not it's a highlight or low light for us, or just, if we're neutral about it. So I guess we'll start off with the prescription.
So for me, the prescription is a highlight. And, I'll tell you why it's a highlight. Because I was sitting there in the studio with the guy who made the shit, and he pressed play, and the first thing that came out of the speakers was Millie Jackson's voice, which Millie Jackson to me is one of my favorite artists to sample. I love her. I love how she gets on tracks and she just be like, yeah, whatever. You should have bought the last motherfucker. Like
that shit was great to
such
me.
a great sample.
If you bought that one, I wouldn't have to be doing this one.
That was
great.
It.
That was dope.
And I love even, pause, but at the very beginning of the joint, he says, I'm soaking wet now. And then you can hear like the sounds, like it sounds like somebody going through, like walking through like mud or water or something, like all the different sound effects. And then it's just like, then you hear Millie and the beat starts to swell up. And then the first words you hear is, who's the hardest independent artist? The judgment is now. And he just starts rhyming, and then the synths start coming in and the beat drop. Like
he was hard on him for sure.
Yeah.
I do like it when the beat breaks, when it gets that midpoint. When the beat breaks, I'm like, oh, okay, this is kind of dope. The beat leading up to that, I think I might have to side with Brother Wise over here.
Yeah. I didn't like that. Now it gets better. Can I?
Yeah, it gets better.
Yeah. Can I call it a midlight? Because that's what it is for me. Because I don't like how it starts.
Yeah.
But I love how it ends. And he himself, again, is rapping his
Yeah.
ass off, right? Yeah. So that's what I love about the song.
Okay.
Yeah.
The lyrics are great.
All right. So Thick Ropes.
I'll let you talk about it.
It's a highlight for me, man. I love that song. I don't know. I can see why somebody wouldn't like put it like in their highlight, but for some reason, I just like the way. Okay, here it is. I figured it out just now. Just talking about it.
He's spitting on this track. So,
That's right, right.
Yeah.
But you hear the vocal tone that he uses on the first song. It's kind of high, a little higher, a little agitated, like he's really rapping from his diaphragm. On the second joint, he's rhyming in a lower register. He's rhyming almost as if he's talking a bit more.
Right,
you know what I mean? Using his natural voice a bit. It's already a big voice, right? And that's the Planet Asia I also know today. So that's why I kind of resonated with that one. So that's why it's a highlight. His vocal tone, for me, was less jarring than it was on The Prescription.
Yeah. I have mixed feelings about the record. I think it's too long.
It is a long song.
And I think it kind of stalls at some point. However, I like the fact that he comes in barring up on the first record, and then the second record he tells you, which is one of my favorite things about Dilla. Dilla, people will put their backpacks on and talk about how much they love Dilla, and Dilla will get on a song and be like, I'm about all the ignorant shit. I got a fucking chain swinging down to my dick and your hoes on me, and I'm throwing money in the strip club. I love that because I think that's human, right? And so I love how Planet Asia comes on the second record and he's talking about bitches shaking their ass to his record and his chain, and his song's called Thick Ropes. I like that because it tells me that he's like human and he's like a three-dimensional figure. And I also love some of the bars here. I wrote down one right here where he says, and there's nowhere to hide. My killers hit you on your chirp with threats. And you hear the chirp, like I'm like, yo, like I love this shit.
Yeah.
He's barring up on the joint. So,
he definitely bars up. But you know me, I also like song structures as well. This isn't it's not a highlight for me. It's not a low light either. I'm just kind of neutral about it. Generally speaking, I did not like the way this album starts, like tracks like 1 through 6. It takes me a while for me to actually get into the album.
Yeah.
The one thing I'll say about this beat I thought was interesting is that he kind of takes like a late 90s approach to like an underground, like almost like a DITC record, like a showbiz and AG. I was telling you that before.
Yeah,
but then he mixes it with like the synthetic horn tuba from like a DJ Toop or something like that, from like something that. So he's like got a mix between like showbiz and AG and like T.I. on here with the beat. I just thought that was kind of interesting that he combined those two styles.
And I think he does that throughout the project, and it's something I like. He has a Cali swing to the drums and the claps, right? The snares are Cali. But then the sample choices are very like East Coast digging in the grates, like, so I like the marriage of that with then the instrumentation layered on top of it.
So for me, it was always like the beats very bright, like
they were
very bright,
especially this one too.
Yeah, you know what I mean. They were very bright, but the samples themselves were a little bit on the dustier side. But the beats themselves were like splash like a lot of color over the music. So
got you.
Yeah.
Right. All right, so Get Active.
We gotta let my man watch.
So
he loves this
your
song.
highlight, right?
This is a huge highlight for me because one, I got to take it back a little bit. Just a quick little caveat. Feel the Agony has been nice to me since 1994.
Yo,
right?
Feel the Agony been nice forever.
Right, since 1994. I mean, this guy is still good to me.
Yeah.
And he's part of the barbershop MCs out of Crescent Heights out there. When I say I love Feel the Agony more than most MCs, I do, man. Like, he's like, I wish I could rap like that. He's that good to me. But
Feel the Agony is like a nigga who, like, you throw a beat on and he'll rap for 30 minutes just freestyling, off the top
and
of his head.
it'll be good.
Yeah.
It'll be some legendary stuff, man.
Yeah.
But one thing about this song is that it was the first song that had a knock to it that felt like gritty, hard, you know, you know what I mean? And like, right.
With the little guitar.
Right. It was just hard as nails, right?
Yeah.
And then the way they're rapping, they're all using that kind of like scattered style.
I didn't like that.
You didn't like that?
No, and he knows why, because especially so Krondon comes in at the end.
He's the second.
So Krondon is the second. So Feel the Agony is the third. All right. So Feel the Agony is fine, but Krondon takes what Planet Asia does and basically just copies it, and it gets repetitive.
I agree.
And that's what I talk about.
I completely
like,
agree.
That's why it's like, look, I'm here for the spitters. I'm here for it, right? But like, Corrupt needs a Daz Dillinger.
Yeah,
Corrupt is a spitter,
yeah.
but you need someone who can also make me a song.
I agree.
And I'm like, you need like that song arrangement, like it matters, yo.
I agree with
matters.
him. I would if Planet Asia did it, and then Krondon came on and he did something totally different, I would have been like, that's ill.
Yeah.
But the fact that they all tried to employ the same style,
Phil's not as bad. Phil is fine at the end, but Krondon, the way he does that, and that's what, like, things like that. Because when I approach this music, right, I'm not just approaching it from a hip hop perspective. I'm approaching it from a musical perspective.
Right.
Got it.
And I like a lot of different music. And I'm like, I listen to the way, like, this is one of the reasons why I love the Beatles so much. It's like, people might think that the Beatles are old and boring, whatever. It's like, no, like, they do a lot of interesting things throughout the song that I'm like, they switch it up here and there. Like, you pay attention. Like, and it's one of those things where, like, you don't really notice it because it just flows so well.
Yeah.
But when you notice that when you notice it, like, all right, the first person is doing something very specific with his verse, and then the second person does the same thing, it's kind of like, I'm immediately, I'm like, nah. So I don't dislike it. I agree what you say about the about the beat. It's got some force. You got that guitar in there. It's dope. But I'm just like, I need that song arrangement. But it's not necessarily a diss. It's not a knock. It's just, it's not really for me.
I think it was because I liked it so much because it was a different style for Asia too.
Yep.
That's really another thing. And I'm, like I told you before, I'm into hearing MCs do
different things
that they normally don't do.
And that is definitely outside of Planet Asia's comfort zone.
So that's
I think I agree with both of you.
Yeah.
I like what you like about this, which is that Planet Asia stepped out of his comfort zone and it gave me an SASG record. So I got to hear guys that I love and they're all clicked up like, yo, we here. But what I don't like is when I'm on the second verse and the second verse guy trying to do the same thing the first verse guy's doing, and I'm starting to get bored.
Yeah, I get it. It wasn't perfect, but I enjoyed it though.
Yeah.
So All the Names featuring cuts by DJ Babu, which is a highlight for me.
Yo,
just not the song, just anytime you had DJ Babu.
So I was wondering because I didn't see it written. Did Babu do those cuts?
Yeah, he did.
He did.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I felt like, and this is gonna sound bad, and I've met Babu as well. Also a great guy, but those cuts felt a little sloppy to me.
They're not his best. I just like that he was cutting.
Well, I like that too.
I'm a sucker for that. I'm a sucker for DJs on the record.
I am too.
That'll get me every time.
And I mean, you heard even on the record, Planet Asia says something about like real hip hop's when you hear the DJ scratch. You know, so you could tell they're trying to create that aesthetic.
It's not his best scratching, but like we talked about we mentioned sound bombing too all the time, and we have an album we have an episode dedicated to that.
Yeah,
and like I love that album so much, so it's just like. You know, when I hear Babu scratching on this, I'm like, I'm just instantly gonna like it because I have such an affinity for that record.
And another thing to say about this is that you know, I think we're still in a time frame where underground hip hop is distinctly one thing and mainstream hip hop is distinctly something different. They're starting to combine, but there's kind of two different worlds. And so it's fun when like one of the worlds calls to the other. So here you've got, you know, Lil Wayne, who's one of the biggest rappers in the whole fucking planet at the time. And they're calling to him with Go DJ, which is one of the biggest records ever of the last few years.
That was his biggest record
at the time.
Yeah, probably.
In his whole career, probably. Yeah. And so it's an underground cat scratching this super mainstream cat. So
but the lyric that he chooses to sample is also really dope.
I'm out the medicine. I'm better than all the
like that. Yeah. I was like, all right, that's dope.
Yeah,
that's dope.
Medicine.
That to me, and to me again, that record is a highlight just for that very reason alone.
Yeah.
Like I'm a sucker for that sort of like aesthetic, MC DJ kind of thing. Give the DJ a bit of light to get busy. And like you said, it wasn't his best work. And I didn't know it was Babu until today. Yeah. So how about
Babs is usually precise.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I was surprised a little at how sloppy.
What if he did it on purpose though? What if that was like his aim to be a little less, underwhelming? I don't know.
I'm gonna keep it a beam with you. I can tell by the way this cut sounds that he's scratching probably on a CDJ. And it's an MP3, and that's why it sounds like that. Because if it was vinyl, it would have sounded way better.
Okay, that makes sense. I'm not that technical, so
nevertheless, it's not the song isn't a highlight for me, but there are things about the song that I like. So now we get into all right. Over your head. Right?
All right, Outlaw wants to kill this song, so go for it.
So this is a low light for me, and the reason why it's a low light,
I could already tell.
It's not that I hate the song, right? But we already talked about how the fact that like Black Thought is featured on here, yet this is not Black Thought to me.
Yeah,
like this is just someone who like happened to spell his name the same way, but it's like a character missing. Yeah. You know what I mean? Or it's it's Black Thought with a Q instead of a G in thought. You know what I'm saying? Like that's what this is.
Funny,
to me, this sounds like this is lazy.
Yeah,
and it sounds like Don't Say Nothing era roots. Which, if you remember, Don't Say Nothing was a record where Black Thought was writing the hook. And then he just mumbled some shit.
Yeah, just to fill in the blanks.
And then they were like, no, keep that.
Yeah, keep
right?
that.
So even that record was lazy. This sounds like a lazy version of a lazy song.
The other thing for me too is that, like I said, I didn't like this opening run of songs. And by the time we get to Over Your Head, I'm kind of like bored. Okay. And so the sequencing of this record, like where it comes after the first 4 tracks, I'm like, No, don't get me wrong. The album definitely livens up for me, right? But just here, it's just kind of like, this is just
I wouldn't just go ahead and say it. It's another mid like, like it's right in the middle. I'm neutral on it because
that's how I feel too.
I don't like. You're right. Black Thought was so underwhelming on that, and I was like, come on, man, you're rapping like, like you're some 70s pimp. You know what I mean? But Planet Asia warmed it up though. Yeah, and he warmed it up, and I do like the hook. I like that. I like the hook how they shouted each other out.
But it's like, what is the hook saying? He's just like, say this, how do you
But they shout each other out on it. That's probably why I like.
Don't be scared. No, just don't be scared. It's like, all right,
it's
cool.
Well, the bridge, I want to say the bridge, predating the hook, I guess. However, you're right. You guys are right. It's not a wonderful song at all.
Asia was barring up though,
but he himself,
he was barring up.
Proving my point that across the album he carries it on his
for
back.
sure.
Yeah, Duke can spit no lie.
I feel like if you were to go to Black Thought and be like, yo, Planet Asia got you on a song,
he wouldn't disagree.
And you play this for him, he'd be like, I did this song.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't even remember this shit.
That was a high moment for them.
All right, so the next one we've already teased this, but I'm in Love with You featuring Jonelle.
Planet Asia pickup line.
So here's what. So is this a low light for me? It's actually not a low light because I actually like the scratching that they did on the hook, or like the sample on the hook. I like that.
Yeah, that's just fire.
I think the beat kind of gets repetitive and it gets a little boring, and it sounds like something that like Ghostface would have done like 2 years prior, but just made it sound better. Like when Ghostface was making like his like generic like love songs with like old school samples.
Yeah,
but
those are better than this.
Yes,
it's like he tried to do that, and then he got Janelle from Round to Round, and like we spoken before about Janelle, how you like her, and I'm
I like her.
Yeah, I'm not really sure she can carry it, and this to me is an example of her not carrying it well.
I think I have a thing for like women that have like this around the way girl.
I get it.
Yeah, no, I get it. I
don't like it though. It's a low light for me.
I know you hate it.
It's a low light for me. I don't like these kind of songs, man, because it sounds like you're trying to catch one.
It's like either do what Ghostface does, or do what Ja Rule does.
Yeah.
You know
But
what
yo,
I mean?
this is what Ghostface does for Planet Asia.
Yeah, I just think that like Ghostface just does it
Ghostface
better.
just has so much like character.
Yeah,
He's
he
such
does.
a character that it's just different, you know.
Planet
Yeah.
Asia was rapping his ass off on it. It was still bad. You know what I mean? Sorry, I couldn't do it, man.
Yeah, so don't get
funny.
better than this. Such and such and such suckable tits. Like, all right, cool.
Oh man, it was rough.
Astrological goddess. You look like Mother Isis.
Oh man, that was rough, man.
The other thing I had to say about this is that I think at the time I probably didn't care, but listening back, when you with that intro, when you have like some old like soul record that you like speed up and like that was oversaturated at the time.
Yeah.
I go back and listen to it now, and I think that's one of the reasons why there's certain Kanye records that I don't like. And I'm just like, yo, like I'm so over it. Like I'm just I'm tripped out of it.
I loved that aesthetic in the time.
At the time, I did. I loved it, but now I don't really
Yeah.
gravitate towards it.
All right, so that's on me. It's my first highlight.
Okay, talk about it.
I think it's just because it's got that combination of like that kind of like West Coast bounce a little bit. It's got there's like this big gravitas about the song. It sounds weighty, and it's just like I kind of like that hook. That's on me. Like it's simple, but I think it's effective, and it doesn't sound lame like some other attempts of this might sound lame.
Yeah,
you know, I think it works to.
Yeah.
Like it just works. I got a little bounce to it. So you know, from the musicality perspective, I'm like, all right, you got my attention now. And this starts my run. There's like 5 or 6 tracks in this run that I'm like, yo, I can rock with this.
Okay.
So this is my first highlight.
It's a highlight for me too, but also because it was the first time me leaning into Evidence's production and going, oh, you can do this too. You know what I mean? Like, oh, you're really a producer.
Right.
Like, you're making beats.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
It was not my favorite beat on the album by far. I would say Get Active is still that for me, but I think that hearing him do this kind of beat was a revelation for me. And then him, you know, Asia himself was good on it. You know what I mean? Again, a lot of the beats may not always deeply resonate like immediately, but Asia carries it. Like, I guess you know,
he does. I think the thing that I like about this from his approach is that he borrows a lot of, well, he and Evidence, they borrow elements from a lot of different things, but there is their own unique personality on this. And that's one of the themes about this podcast. When we talk about artists, like, you know, if nothing else, at least have like a unique personality. And I feel like even though he has borrowed some things from other artists here, there is enough. I'm like, nah, this is like Planet Asia doing his own thing with it.
Yeah.
So I fuck with it.
Yeah.
I think the thing that I like the most about this record is actually just like this restored me to like, oh, this is a Cali album.
Yeah.
And so That's On Me means something to us from California. Like we talk like that. Get Active, that's something that means something to us, right?
Okay.
You know, so it's like when I hear Cali slang and I hear certain things, even like you said, the kind of the swing of it is all Cali. And so that's what I liked about this record.
That's a good way to put it too.
All right. So now we got On Your Way 93706. Do I have to say the numbers or can I just say On Your Way?
Well, so that's his zip code.
Is that what it is? That makes sense.
That's his zip code. So you know, I'm not from Fresno, so I don't really know so much about that. But I think this whole like kind of crush groove sound never really did it for me. And I remember when I was sitting in the studio and they played this record, I was just kind of like, what are y'all trying to do? But I actually really like the part at the very end when he shouts out Mac Dre and then he does that like that little hook. He's like, something like when the pistol spits. I wish that was the hook. Because I liked that part the best of the whole song, but I didn't love this song. It's just a melody to me.
So it's a highlight for me because I appreciate references to things that like, I appreciate references to like an old school sound. And like you said, it's got the crush groove sound, which I'm not necessarily a big fan of. But the fact that you reference it, I actually think they executed pretty well here. And so because I think that they got it to work, it's a highlight for me. Because we talked about on the Corrupt album when they tried to do that whole old school aesthetic and it didn't land on the Loose Cannons. Right?
Okay.
How they tried to do that old school thing and it just the whole NWA thing, like it just didn't land.
Yeah.
I think it actually lands here and I think it works. And because of that, I'm like, nah, like I see what you did here. It's in my run. So yeah, this is a highlight for me.
Yeah, it's a highlight for me for that reasons that you say it's a highlight for you.
Yeah.
I like that sound. There's something about that sort of like old school sound. I didn't really like. I was a junkie for hip hop, man. I bought it all, man. In my mom's house right now, right here in PG County, I have tapes and records from the 80s all up to the 90s.
Right.
I wasted a lot of money. But because of that, I also learned to hear a lot of things. And that song reminds me of that old stuff I was listening to in my mom's basement, Right. And then too, I like to hear him give props to where he's from. I'm a sucker for an MC bigging up his hometown. That's always going to win for me. Even if it's not my favorite song, I like hearing that.
Yeah, no, that's dope. And I think that time frame, even on Loose Cannons, right? Like it predates me in terms of what I listen to. So I don't hear Crush Groove shit and like it doesn't resonate with me like, oh, I remember where I was or anything like that, right? So I think that's also something to keep in mind.
That works too, yeah.
So now we have Get Down or Lay Down.
So this is where my run starts.
This is where your run starts.
This is where my run starts. I love this record. And I love Gold Chain music. I love that he's got his own clique of people. This is the most like Strong Arm Steady record that doesn't feature Strong Arm Steady on here. And so I just love this shit. I love the transitions between the different artists where, the first dude comes through and he's talking about your homeboy telling you, get down, my nig. And then when PA comes on, he just commands the shit out of the track. He says, at first niggas think they might have been harder, but now my shit is everywhere, dog, like vitamin water. It's what? Yeah. Oh, this nigga's a problem. So I love this record.
Vitamin water was popping up around that
It was everywhere.
Yeah.
What?
I heard that line outside. I was like,
I grinned when I heard it too. He killed it.
Yeah.
It's a highlight for me too, man.
It's not a highlight for me, although there's a lot of things I like about this song. So I do like a good like hip hop cipher, right? And I like going back and forth between there's 3 cats on here, right?
Yeah.
I do like that. Generally I like the beat. I love the sentiment of the hook. Get down or lay down is a sentiment, is a really good sentiment. But I think that shit sounds lame to me. Like I get down or lay down, and to hear it I think it's like every 4 bars you hear it. Is every 4 or it's every 4 bars?
That's how the beat sounds.
I know.
Then they say it maybe like every.
It sounds kind of gimmicky, a little repetitive for me. It's not bad. It is not a low light because it just like for me, I'm just like I could do without that. But that being said, though, like if it's a highlight for you, like I get it.
I feel the opposite way. Okay. And he and I are fans of Strong Arm Steady. Like I could see Strong Arm Steady making this exact song.
It would have killed it.
But Planet Asia would have been even better, like he was with his bar. You know what I mean? So it works for me. And then the whole Get Down or Lay Down. I mean, it just works.
I guess it all comes together. It coalesces so well for me. I don't know. I can't say a bad thing about it for some reason.
I love it.
Yeah.
So now we get into the medicine.
The medicine.
The title track.
I felt like this should have been track 2.
Or 1.
Okay.
Like this should have been like the first real record on here. Like it's the title track. It's saying everything that it needs to say. He's barring the fuck up. The beat's just going. Like it's perfect to me.
So this is a highlight for me. And we talk about rappers who are just like spitters or like rapping for the sake of rapping. And I think that sometimes it works for me and sometimes it doesn't. It depends on the beat. And this is like a spitter's beat. This is it's another one like
Spit.
Exactly. It's another one like Spit from Showbiz and AG, where it's just like, all right, I just got this beat and I'm just gonna spit.
Right.
And I'm like, I don't want an entire album of that if we're just doing something with music. And if you have songs where you're trying to actually make songs, then I think rapping for the sake of rapping can kind of get tired. But when you have a track where you just spit and you just barring up and you have a beat like this, thumbs up for me.
This is also one of the most Fresno records on here.
Yeah.
To
Is
me.
that right?
And one of the things he says, some fucking with me, I'll leave you under the town, covered in cow, probably somewhere in the Central Val. And like if you know how Cali is laid out, like he's from Fresno, so that's just south of like where the Bay Area is, right? And then you have this whole area of California that's just truck stops and cow pastures, and then you have Southern California.
Got you.
So what he's basically saying is, I'll leave you under that area where it's nothing but cow. And so like I just feel like he has like specific like bars that are specific to being from Fresno, being from Cali. I love that.
It was a very visual song, and it's a highlight, obviously, for me. It's one of the first records I heard from the album.
No, it's just dope.
And honestly, I wish it were higher in the track list because
it probably should be.
It would have grabbed people more because being so buried deep in the playlist, in the track list, it just kind of ruins its effect. But it's a great song all the way through for me.
Completely agree. And I almost always like any song that has louder, that louder chopped into it. I love that sample. It's such a great vocal sample.
It does work.
All right, so now we have Stick and Move featuring Prodigy. And this is one where like I want it to be a highlight, but I don't Prodigy doesn't, it just doesn't feel like a Prodigy feature to me. I know it does for y'all, it just not for me. It just doesn't feel like a Prodigy feature, even though he's featured on it.
Yeah. It's not his most commanding feature, but man, I tell you what, so I, as a producer, have tried to sample this exact same phrase. Many people have, right? It's great. Alchemist has sampled it before. I think he also is a co-producer here. But I love this sample. I love how they chop it so it cuts before the end or the tail end of it.
I think DJ Revolution did the cuts on here. I think.
Okay. I even like the cock, back, bust, gold, chains, platinum. I like the hook. I like everything about this shit. And then Prodigy comes on. It's not Prodigy's best verse, but it doesn't need to be. Like, he does exactly what I need.
I don't mind that it's not his best verse. I just, even like his voice, like the way I'm used to hearing Prodigy, I'm like, oh, Prodigy's on here. And then I'm listening to it, I'm like, wait, I thought Prodigy was on here. Yeah. Like, that's kind of like what happened for me.
Yeah, I went to the record like diving in, hoping that Prodigy was going to come kill it. Yeah. And he didn't quite do that. But to Yinka's point, it wasn't like the worst Prodigy I've heard. Yeah. I've heard worse Prodigy verses. Yeah. It was serviceable, you know. Yeah. At the very least, it worked for what it was doing. Yeah. And Killer Ben, you know, I don't know, that wasn't. I mean, I love Killer Ben.
He was fine. Yeah, I like him.
I like Killer Ben a lot. I think Killer Ben is one of the best out. I mean, he's really good. Yeah. Even before he got dropped from Aftermath, but even back when he was Aftermath, he was dope back in the 90s. And he was serviceable here too. Planet Asia owned the song. Yes. Let's just say that. It's a highlight for me.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, that sample to me, just even by itself, without what they did to it for the beat, it sounds like a superhero. Like, it sounds like a superhero's theme song, or the Avengers are coming or something. So true. It's already crazy. And then, you know, you put cats that I love on it. So, I mean, and don't nobody tie P but the HAVOC. So I loved it, man.
I love the sound bed at the end, that last like minute or so when I think someone is speaking on top of it. I actually wish that they made a song out of that little sound bed at the end. I think it's incredible.
So the part that you're talking about that's not the sound bed or that's over the sound bed is that clip from that movie, right? Where the ladies is speaking jive to the dude who gets
I think that's
injured
on the airplane or something like that.
Yeah. I always love that clip whenever I see it.
I just like that beat though. Yeah. I had mixed feelings about the clip. Whatever. Just because I'm like,
you think it's like coonery or something?
It's a little bit, yeah.
I get it. I can see what you're saying.
But that's neither here nor there. I just wish that like that little whatever that beat. I wish they made a full song out of that. Because that beat is crazy. So that actually ends my run though. Even though it's not a highlight for me, that's still my run. And then we get into Ghetto's Thirsty, which I believe y'all like this one. I think
it's still in my run. I don't love it, but it's in the run. But I think you have to have this record in order for this to be a Planet Asia record.
Yeah.
Why is that?
It's conscious. He's a conscious artist. You know what I'm saying? So I mean, I think maybe you can speak to it a little bit more.
Well, yeah. So I think that you know, Ghetto's Thirsty is a highlight for me, obviously because of the themes that he's trying to address there. You know, I think throughout the album, especially up until this point, all you heard is a whole lot of bars, right? Yeah. And I mean, well, besides that Terrible Girl record, but you hear a lot of like bars about just being better than most and having money, having this and having that. And I think you need a song to sort of like show his songwriting range a bit. And I think that's what he tried to do here.
Yeah. I think the thing for me is that I appreciate the subject matter on the song. I do. But like that fake ass Neo hook where he's like, keep your head up. We gonna do this. Stay focused. Keep moving. Whatever it is. It's like that's the hook. Like
I didn't need much more, but what I would have liked is I actually wish he had taken his Black Thought favor and called it in for this song. Yeah, maybe. Or got Mos Def or got somebody else to give like a different side to it, because I think Ghetto's Thirsty is something that we need. And I think we as a people need to address like the things that we need to change in order to advance, right? Okay. But I thought it would have been cool to have like somebody with a different perspective. Like if he brought it on some like, yo, I'm a 5%er, and the things that I've learned have told me that this is what we need to do.
Right.
And then somebody from a different perspective came and was like, we as a black people, we need to do this instead. You know,
there is a lot of rigidness within the 5% nation, and I'm admitting this as a member of this great nation. You know, there are times that when, you know, you hear a rapper speak from that perspective, that it's like it's one way or the highway, you know what I mean? And I think having perspective would have helped on that song, you know what I mean? But also because I am of that lineage, I resonate with it because it speaks directly to what I know, you know, and what I've also lived, you know what I mean? And also experienced and, you know, and observed and been around people who speak that way. So that's why it kind of connects with me, you know what I mean?
If he would have got like Dead Prez on this,
it would have been
like,
awesome.
It would have been crazy.
Yeah, he would have been out of here.
Stickman, both of them? Stickman or M1? Stickman or M1?
I would have put both on him. I would have put him on the first verse and then both.
You know how I feel about Dead Prez.
Yeah, I just think that they would have brought like energy and another perspective.
It's probably true. They probably would have been good on this record.
Especially Stickman. Stickman,
I love Stickman.
Great, man.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. The Hustle Part 2 featuring Shake the Man.
I like this joint.
I like this song too.
It's a low light for me.
You didn't like it?
So what's wrong?
Don't
with
be mad at the hustle.
Don't be mad at the hustle.
Just
it's tail business, I guess they say, right?
I thought that hook is just so lame to me.
It's tail business. You know, that's the whole. It's paid homage to where he's from, man.
So I can't speak on that then. So if that's the case, then then I'm out of the loop.
Yeah, I mean that's it's just fly Cali Cat shit. It's a short, succinct song.
It is
just
short,
like, yo, get your hustle.
Thank God, but you know,
yeah,
I like because any longer I would have hated it, but I like it as the song. I like what it represents too. You know, I also like Shake too. I mean,
and I like at the end where it's just like the beat drops out and you just hear the snaps and you just hear "Don't be mad" at just their voice.
They're
like, I love
having fun, man. It was a fun record.
Yeah. I think that a lot of this, I think I probably would have had to be there or just be like more familiar. But I think again, like going back and listening to this, 16 years later, I'm just like it didn't do anything for me.
Right.
So, No Questions Asked featuring Turban and Killer Ben.
So this wraps up my run, and I really like this. It's another familiar sample. You know, I like all of the posse cut gold chain music type joints with all of them on it. So I liked it. And I don't even really have that much to say about it besides I like the sample, I like the bars.
Well, it's a highlight for me because Turban is really raw. And I don't hear him enough. I know he's part of the Gold Chain military, but Turban is raw. Every time I've heard a Turban verse, I run to it. You know what I mean? Yeah. And Killer Ben is Killer Ben. I mean, and this is also a better Killer Ben performance than the one previously on Stick a Move. Highlight for me.
So it's not a highlight for me, though. I do like the hook.
I like the way down with no questions asked.
Yeah, I think it's a really, really solid hook. Had they done to actually develop more of the rest of the song, like, so the hook kind of deviates, it breaks a little bit, but the rest of the verses, like, it's just the same all the way through. Had they actually done more to like grow the song and develop the song, it probably would be a highlight for me, because I do like it. It's nice. It's just not a highlight, but I do like that hook a lot though.
Wow.
So but it was cool though.
Yeah, that's the end of the run for me.
I got you. Old Timer Thoughts featuring Defari. I'm assuming this is a low light for you.
It's not a low light. It's just a meh. Like, I mean, you know, the beat just kind of drones on, tan, 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 or whatever. It's just like, or that's the next one, which same. But you know, it just drones kind of on, and then I don't know why in this era, because even what was the Pac album that we did, Me Against the World, where he had the one song where he's like, the old school, we used to play Scully and we used to do this and I don't like them old school songs, nigga. I don't care what you was doing 25 years ago. So, you know, Defari's whole verse where he's like, oh, back in the day, it was like this and it was like that. I don't care. So that's why I don't like this song.
I don't like the song at all. Not for the reason he's even saying either. It's just, it's kind of monotonous. It just doesn't have any real energy in it. And Defari, who I love didn't really come with his best work, you know.
I love Defari so much that I'm just like, why?
It's
did
sad,
y'all
man, because
make
Defari Heru is like really one of my favorite art, and he's still rocking. He's still doing it, you know, despite all these years later, man, and never really getting any big fanfare. Defari just didn't really deliver on this one.
It's not a highlight for me. I'm kind of neutral about it. It felt deep, but it didn't really resonate with me either.
What was deep about it?
That's what I said. It had a song that felt like it should be
like it
deep,
should have been deep. Okay.
But I didn't connect with it that
Empty
way.
calories, man.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's good. Empty calories. I like that.
Yeah.
All right, so now we close it out with the last track on the album, Dilated Agents, which is, I like the name Dilated Agents.
This record underwhelmed me.
I wanted so much from it.
This was like you were just waiting to bust and then it was just not there. Like it was like, yo, what is like I wanted to like this so bad. Like I wanted to hear Rascal and Planet Asia together again. I wanted to hear Evidence and Rocka together. Like I wanted this moment, and then the record was just like, eh.
It was underwhelming. And I love Cali Agents, right? I think anybody who's a hip hop fan who's heard that album, How the West Was Won, they would say that album's one of their favorite. This wasn't the best Cali Agents performance. And Dilated Peoples, Rocka was there. He was just there, man.
Rascal even sounded like he phoned it in. Like,
everybody kind of phoned it except Planet Asia.
Evidence is on there too, right?
Yeah, because he's part of Dilated. So and everybody phoned it in too. every MC.
So this is definitely a low light for me.
It's a low light, dang.
Yeah, it's a low light because all the features seem very appropriate. It's like, okay, Cali Agents, Dilated Peoples, this makes sense. And then you hear the song, you're like, wait, this is what the song you decided to create, and you're gonna close the album with this?
Yeah.
Nah, I'm good.
Honestly, if Ghetto's Thirsty was what we wanted it to be, that should have been the last song.
Same.
I can see that. Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, that would have been good.
But yeah, I don't know why Dilated Agents. I don't know why it's this. Like,
it just kind of went out like a wet fart, man. Like I just, it just wasn't like the best way to end the album, man.
I got you. All right. Well, we've gone through all the songs. What else do we have to say about this album?
Not too much, man. I'm glad, Wise, that we got to get you on a one of these joints.
I appreciate it, man.
And that you were able to kind of lend your lens to it. And I think we also have kind of opened the door for possibly talking about more, maybe Strong Arm Steady. Like I would love to do In Search of Stoney Jackson. I love that project.
We'll be here 3 hours.
We definitely talk about a lot of hip hop where it's like, all right, it's good for the heads, but it's also like hip hop that's more palatable to just like, oh yeah, sure, I like hip hop music.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
true.
this would be more for like, nah, this is for the heads.
That's true.
I think you're right. I think it does open up the door for not just the Strong Arm. Was it Strong Arm
Steady?
Not just them, but just like that kind of just that kind of just hip hop heady music.
I don't want to misrepresent myself. I like it all.
Yeah.
Like when it comes to hip hop, I listen to trap. I listen to drill. I listen to stuff in the UK. I listen to it all, man. There's no segment of the music or the culture that I don't try to engage with, and it's part of my duty in my job to know.
Sense.
And I kind of get off on the fact of knowing a lot about what's going on out there.
Dope.
Although I'm an older gentleman, I still dive in deep. I still have a thirst to try to discover. So podcasts like this is kind of like, great for the outside observer who doesn't really know. And then for us who do know, to be reminded of what was dope and why it was dope or why it wasn't dope.
Yeah, and I appreciate you saying that. And I think we could do a better job of curating a community that allows both of those audiences to engage with each other, right? Because there are people that listen to us that they're listening to us like, oh, Notorious B.I.G. had a record called Ready to Die. Let me hear about this. And then there's people that are like, I remember when this album came out and I was at the store buying it, right? So it's interesting when you get the kind of nexus of those two different groups of people and like what their different perspectives are when it comes to pieces of art.
I think it's important because I think the only way this culture thrives is through conversation.
Yeah.
You know? So combos like this helps us not only like revere a product that needs to be revered, but also gives us a chance to recharge our minds and put something new in there and get different perspectives. Because I didn't know your story about them.
Yeah.
I didn't know that I love the Beatles too. I didn't, it's good to meet another Beatles fan. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But also a hip hop fan. You know what I mean? So this is kind of a great crossroads of having a conversation about art. Because that's what it is at the end of the day. We're discussing art in a real way, in an honest way. Because we didn't lie about what we did or didn't like. We told the truth.
Yeah.
And that's what hip hop is for me, telling the truth, man.
That's dope.
So, love it.
I think that's actually a good way to close out the episode, unless you have anything else.
Nah, appreciate you coming to join us, brother. Peace.
It,
All right,
awesome.
Peace.
SASG. Fuck y'all cats heard about me. 559-2213. I was born in the 70s, raised in the 80s, got my game in the 90s. 2000 I was crazy, had a deal when I was 21. Interscope signed me, then I left in 2003. Still have my hopes and dreams. 2004 I came with the grand opening. Hardest working in the game, independent touch and change. Fuck with me, you bust your brain, but I ain't really with it. But this is my religion, gotta get it how I live it. So fuck with me and I will turn you back into a spirit. Don't fuck with me cause I don't have the time for interference. And luckily I'm in the studio just writing lyrics. Cause if I was still stuck in Fresno, then I'd be sinning. But niggas out here getting that dough and only winning. Yo, trigger side riding on fools who want to end this. I'm not going to back down, no, you can't forget it. So every time I'm done, you just know somebody shit it. This is West, click, clack, chest, vest, shit that makes my niggas get active. For the term sets, projects, hoods, block, look, watch. We gon' pop it off and get active. Now get active, get active, get active, get active. July 976, I was born into the mix, surrounded by Bloods and Crips. Pops was nowhere to be found, I was in the trenches, stuck between a rock and roll.